The bridge of the Imperial dreadnought, Zirian's fury, fell silent as the sensor officer's face went pale. Admiral Kethvar's forearms tensed against his command chair, his reptilian eyes narrowing at the holographic display that flickered before them. "Report," he hissed, his voice carrying the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. Lieutenant Zara Chen, the only human on the bridge, looked up from her tactical station with confusion written across her face. "Sir, we're detecting an energy signature unlike anything in our databases. It's coming from the Sol system." A collective murmur rippled through the bridge crew. The Sol system, humanity's birth world, was supposed to be nothing more than a backwater collection of primitive planets. The Galactic Empire had catalogued it decades ago as a Class 7 civilization, barely capable of interplanetary travel, certainly no threat to the mighty empire that spanned 3 galaxy arms. Admiral Kethvar's scaled fingers drummed against his armrest. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports show the humans still use chemical propulsion. They can't even leave their own solar system efficiently." But the readings didn't lie. On the main display, a massive energy bloom erupted from Earth's location, a signature that registered power levels comparable to their own fusion cores. No, wait. The numbers were climbing higher. "Lieutenant Chen," the Admiral's voice carried, "a dangerous edge. Your species is known for their creativity. What could produce such readings?" Zara's hands flew across her console, her heart racing as she processed the data. She joined the Imperial Navy 5 years ago, one of the few humans deemed worthy of service in the Empire's fleet. She'd always been proud of that distinction, but now doubt crept into her mind. "Sir, I don't know. This energy signature is beyond anything Earth possessed when I left. The power output is increasing exponentially." She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's as if they've discovered something revolutionary." Across the bridge, Captain Vorthak, the spider-like arachnid weapons officer, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Admiral, perhaps we should notify the High Command. If the humans have developed new technology—" "The humans are insects," Kethvar snarled. "We've observed them for decades. They fight among themselves over resources. They pollute their own world. They're centuries behind our most primitive colonies." But even as he spoke, the energy readings continued to climb. Suddenly, the communications officer, a crystalline being called Quartz, chimed with an electronic harmony. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from Earth." On screen, the holographic display shimmered, then cleared to reveal a human face. The man appeared middle-aged, with graying hair and calm blue eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera. Behind him, Zara could see what looked like a pristine control room filled with technology she didn't recognize. "Greetings, Admiral Kethvar of the Imperial Fleet," the human said, his voice carrying an odd mixture of politeness and confidence. "My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I believe you've detected some unusual energy readings from our little planet." The bridge erupted in shocked whispers. How did this human know the Admiral's name? How did he know they were monitoring Earth? Kethvar's claws extended as his anger flared. "Human, you will explain this energy signature immediately. What primitive weapons are you attempting to develop?" Dr. Webb smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and unsettling. "Weapons? Oh, Admiral, you misunderstand. Completely. What you're detecting isn't a weapon at all. It's simply our new energy source. We've finally cracked the secret of zero-point field manipulation." The words hit the bridge like a thunderclap. Zero-point field manipulation was theoretical physics that even the Empire's greatest scientists had only dreamed of achieving. The ability to extract energy from the quantum vacuum itself would revolutionize everything: propulsion, manufacturing, even the fundamental structure of civilization. "Impossible," Captain Vorthak hissed through his mandibles. "Our greatest minds have worked on zero-point theory for millennia. A species that can barely reach their own moon cannot—" "Cannot what?" Dr. Webb interrupted, his smile widening. "Cannot think outside the box? Cannot approach problems from a fresh perspective? Cannot achieve what your superior scientists have failed to accomplish?" His tone remained pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Perhaps, Captain, the problem isn't our limitations. Perhaps it's your assumptions. Admiral Kethvar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. The energy readings were still climbing, now approaching levels that would power an entire star system. If the humans had truly achieved zero-point manipulation— "You're bluffing," he declared, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Am I?" Dr. Webb gestured off-screen, and the energy signature suddenly spiked again, this time accompanied by a visual phenomenon that made the entire bridge crew gasp. On the long-range sensors, they could see Earth beginning to glow, not with the fire of destruction, but with a clean, brilliant light that seemed to emanate from the planet's surface. The energy readings were now beyond anything in the Imperial database. "This is just the beginning, Admiral," Dr. Webb continued. "You see, while your empire has spent the last 1,000 years perfecting ways to conquer and control, we've been asking different questions. What if cooperation is more powerful than domination? What if diversity of thought trumps uniformity? What if the strength of a civilization isn't measured by how many worlds it conquers, but by how effectively it can solve problems?" Lieutenant Chen found herself leaning forward, her heart pounding. She'd left Earth believing it was a backward world, but now, the zero-point field was just the first breakthrough, Dr. Webb said, his eyes seeming to look directly at her through the screen. "Once we stopped trying to force our way through problems and started listening to the universe instead, the discoveries came quickly. Energy, propulsion, manufacturing, medicine. We've revolutionized them all in the past 5 years." 5 years? Kethvar's voice cracked. Impossible technological advancement in 5 years? Possible when you have 8 billion minds working together instead of a few thousand superior beings making all the decisions, Dr. Webb replied. When you value questions over answers, exploration over exploitation, cooperation over conquest. The Admiral's claws dug into his armrests. This was not how first contact with a primitive species was supposed to go. The Empire had protocols, procedures, established methods of bringing new worlds into their fold. None of those protocols accounted for this scenario. "What do you want, human?" Kethvar demanded. Dr. Webb's expression grew more serious. "We want what every intelligent species should want, Admiral. Peace, progress, the chance to explore the universe and discover its wonders. But we also want something else, something your empire has forgotten." "Which is?" "Freedom." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Around the bridge, crew members exchanged glances. Freedom was not a concept the Empire promoted. Order, hierarchy, control. These were the pillars of Imperial civilization. "The Empire brings order to chaos," Kethvar stated, reciting the official doctrine. "We provide structure, guidance, protection to lesser species." "And what has that order cost you?" Dr. Webb asked quietly. "When was the last time your empire made a true breakthrough? When did you last discover something that changed how you see the universe? How many brilliant minds have been silenced because they didn't fit into your hierarchy?" Lieutenant Chen felt a chill run down her spine. She thought of her own journey to the Imperial Academy, how many of her ideas had been dismissed as too human or inefficient. How many times had she been told to follow protocol instead of pursuing her instincts? "Your empire is stagnating, Admiral," Dr. Webb continued. "You've become so focused on controlling what you have that you've forgotten how to grow. Meanwhile, we've been growing, learning, discovering." The energy readings spiked again, and this time new contacts appeared on the sensors. Ships, but not like any ships in the Imperial database. They moved without visible propulsion, their hulls seeming to bend light around them in impossible ways. "Fleet positions around Earth," the sensor officer reported, his voice shaking. 20, no, 50 contacts. Energy signatures unlike anything we've recorded. Dr. Webb nodded. "The Harmony Fleet. Each ship represents a different approach to the same problem. How do you travel between stars when you're no longer limited by conventional physics?" "This is impossible," Captain Vorthak whispered. "A primitive species cannot develop such technology so quickly." There's that word again, Dr. Webb said with a sad smile. Impossible. Do you know what we learned when we stopped saying impossible? We learned that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any of us imagined. We learned that consciousness itself might be the key to manipulating quantum fields. We learned that cooperation between different minds creates possibilities that no single intelligence could achieve. Admiral Kethvar's mind raced. The implications were staggering. If humanity had truly achieved such breakthroughs, it would upset the entire balance of galactic power. The Empire's dominance relied on their technological superiority. Without that advantage, "What do you propose?" he asked, hating himself for showing weakness. "Simple," Dr. Webb replied. "We talk. Real conversation, not conquest. Your empire has knowledge we could use. Star charts, biological data, cultural insights from thousands of worlds. We have technologies that could benefit everyone. Why not share?" "The Empire does not negotiate with primitives," Kethvar declared, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. "Then perhaps it's time for the Empire to evolve," Dr. Webb said softly. "Because, Admiral, what you're seeing today isn't the end of our development. It's barely the beginning, and we're not the only ones." "What do you mean? Did you really think Earth was the only world questioning your Empire's assumptions? Did you believe you could rule 3 galaxy arms without someone somewhere asking if there might be a better way?" The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. If other worlds had been developing in secret, if humanity was just the first to reveal their progress. "We're not declaring war, Admiral," Dr. Webb said, his voice gentle but firm. "We're declaring independence. The question is, will your Empire accept that some species choose a different path, or will you try to force us back into your cage?" Transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Kethvar stared at the blank screen, his mind reeling. In the space of one conversation, everything he'd believed about the galactic order had been challenged. The humans, the primitive, backward humans, had somehow achieved technological breakthroughs that should have been impossible. But more than that, they'd done something the Empire had never considered. They'd chosen to grow instead of conquer, and now the Admiral faced a choice that would determine the fate of not just his fleet, but potentially the entire Empire itself. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. "What are your orders?" Kethvar looked around his bridge, seeing his crew with new eyes. For the first time he wondered, what could they achieve if they stopped following orders and started asking questions? The energy readings from Earth continued to climb, each pulse a reminder that the universe had just become a far more complicated place. Chapter 2. The Empire Trembles. The emergency session of the Imperial High Council convened. Within hours of Admiral Kethvar's report, the Great Chamber, carved from a single crystal moon orbiting the capital world of Imperius Prime, buzzed with tension as representatives from 100 species took their assigned positions. At the head of the crystal table sat Emperor Zixthul, his ancient form barely visible within the life support apparatus that had kept him alive for the past 3 centuries. His voice, when it came, was amplified through speakers that made every word echo through the chamber like a judgment from the gods. "Admiral Kethvar," the Emperor's voice rasped, "repeat your report for the Council." The Admiral stood at attention, his forearms clasped behind his back. Despite his military bearing, those who knew him could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "Your Imperial Magnificence, at 800 hours Standard Time, my fleet detected massive energy signatures emanating from the Sol system. Upon investigation, we discovered that the human species has achieved technological capabilities far beyond our previous assessments." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Counselor Vexhai, a mantis-like being from the warrior caste, clicked, his bladed forearms together. "Impossible. Our intelligence services have monitored humanity for decades. They are barely above Stone Age level technology." "With respect, Counselor," Admiral Kethvar replied, "our intelligence may have been incomplete." A new voice cut through the chamber, clear, confident, and unmistakably human. "Your intelligence wasn't incomplete, Admiral. It was exactly what we wanted you to see." Every head in the chamber turned as Dr. Marcus Webb materialized in the center, of the room, not as a hologram but physically present, as if he had simply stepped through space itself. The chamber erupted in chaos. Guards raised their weapons, counselors shouted in alarm, and several species representatives activated their personal defense fields. But Dr. Webb simply stood calmly in the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back, a slight smile on his face. "Peace," he said, and somehow his voice carried over the din without being raised. "I come bearing gifts and proposals, not weapons." Emperor Zixthal's life support systems hummed as he leaned forward. "How did you penetrate our defenses? This facility is protected by quantum barriers that should be impenetrable." "Should be," Dr. Webb agreed, "based on your understanding of physics. But what if your understanding has been limited by your assumptions? What if the universe operates on principles you've never considered?" General Mordock, the Empire's supreme military commander, stepped forward with his weapon drawn. "Surrender, human. You will be questioned, studied, and then executed for this intrusion." Dr. Webb looked at the weapon with genuine curiosity rather than fear. "A plasma disruptor, Mark 7th. Impressive engineering, though I notice you've never solved the overheating problem in extended combat situations." He gestured casually, and the weapon simply vanished from the general's hands. "How?" General Mordock began. "Quantum manipulation," Dr. Webb explained, as if he were discussing the weather. "Once you understand that consciousness and quantum fields are intimately connected, moving objects through space becomes relatively simple. Your weapon is currently in a stable orbit around your outer moon, by the way, completely undamaged." The chamber fell silent. The casual display of impossible technology had shaken even the most confident council members. Emperor Zixthal's breathing apparatus hissed as he processed this development. "What do you want, human?" "The same thing I told Admiral Kethvar," Dr. Webb replied. "To talk. You see, we've spent the last 5 years not just developing new technologies but studying the Empire itself. Your history, your methods, your limitations." "Limitations?" Counselor Vexhi's mandibles clicked dangerously. "The Empire spans 3 galaxy arms. We command the loyalty of 1,000 species. We have brought order to chaos across—" "And when was your last major technological breakthrough?" Dr. Webb interrupted gently. "When did you last discover a new principle of physics? When did any of your member species develop something that changed the fundamental nature of your civilization?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Around the chamber, council members shifted uncomfortably, because they all knew the answer. "The Empire perfects existing technologies," Counselor Thekra, a blue-skinned humanoid, stated defensively. "We optimize, we improve efficiency." "You stagnate," Dr. Webb said simply. "You've created a system so focused on control that it's forgotten how to grow. Do you know what we've achieved in just 5 years of truly free scientific inquiry?" Without waiting for an answer, he gestured, and the air above the chamber filled with holographic displays showing impossible technologies. Ships that moved by folding space, manufacturing systems that assembled matter at the atomic level, energy sources that tapped directly into the quantum foam. "Zero-point energy extraction," he narrated as the images shifted. "Consciousness-directed quantum manipulation. Instantaneous communication across any distance. Gravitational field manipulation. And we're just getting started." General Mordock recovered his composure. "Impressive parlor tricks. But can your technologies stand against the might of the Imperial fleet? We have 10,000 battlecruisers, each capable of destroying a planet." Dr. Webb's expression grew sad. "General, that's exactly the kind of thinking that's held you back. You see a new development and immediately ask, how can I use this to destroy my enemies? We saw the same developments and asked, how can I use this to help everyone flourish? Pretty words," Emperor Zixthal wheezed, "but naive. The universe is not a kind place. Order must be imposed or there is only chaos." "Is there?" Dr. Webb asked. "Or is that just what you tell yourselves to justify your methods? Because from where I stand, the Empire looks like the source of most of the galaxy's chaos." The accusation sent a ripple of anger through the chamber, but Dr. Webb continued before anyone could object. How many worlds have you conquered in the name of bringing order? How many species have you uplifted by forcing them to abandon their own development paths? How many brilliant minds have been silenced because their ideas didn't fit your hierarchy? Huygen gestured again, and the displays changed to show historical data. Conquest records, subjugation statistics, the systematic suppression of independent technological development across dozens of worlds. You don't bring order, Dr. Webb said quietly. You bring stagnation. You take the infinite diversity of galactic civilization and force it into your narrow mold. And in doing so, you've crippled not just the species you've conquered, but yourselves, Counselor. Vexhai rose from his seat, his blade arms gleaming. These are lies designed to weaken our resolve. Humans are master manipulators, skilled at— At what? Dr. Webb interrupted. At cooperation? At looking at problems from multiple angles? At valuing diversity of thought over rigid hierarchy? He smiled sadly. Yes, we are skilled at those things. And that's exactly why we've achieved in 5 years what your empire hasn't managed in 1,000. The Emperor's life support systems hummed as he considered this. Even if what you say is true, human, what would you have us do? The Empire cannot simply change overnight. Can't it? Dr. Webb asked. What if I told you that humanity isn't the only species that's been developing in secret? What if there are dozens of worlds within your own empire that have been quietly working on technologies you've never imagined? The implication sent a chill through the chamber. If multiple species had been developing advanced technologies in secret. You're suggesting a conspiracy, General Mordock said, his voice tight with suspicion. I'm suggesting evolution, Doctor, Webb replied. Natural selection applied to civilizations. Your empire has been the dominant force for so long that you've forgotten something fundamental. Adapt or die. Admiral Kethvar, who had been listening in silence, finally spoke. Dr. Webb, what exactly are you proposing? A new model, Dr. Webb said, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. Instead of an empire based on conquest and control, what about a federation based on cooperation and mutual benefit? Instead of forcing uniformity, what about celebrating diversity? Instead of hoarding knowledge, what about sharing it freely? Chaos, Emperor Zixthul declared. Without central authority, there would be constant conflict, resource wars, technological disasters. Would there? Dr. Webb asked. Or is that just what you've been told? Because from our perspective, most of the galaxy's conflicts stem from your empire's methods. Species rebel because they're oppressed. Resources are fought over because you've created artificial scarcity through your control systems. Technological disasters happen because you've stifled the very diversity of thought that could prevent them. He gestured one final time, and the holographic displays showed a different vision. Worlds working together, sharing technologies and resources, each species contributing their unique perspectives to solve common problems. This is what we're offering, Dr. Webb said. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not submission, but partnership. Not the end of your civilization, but its transformation into something greater. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 1,000 years, the empire had been built on the assumption that order required control, that peace required conquest, that progress required hierarchy. Now a species they had dismissed as primitive was challenging those fundamental assumptions, and they were backing up their challenge with technologies that made those assumptions seem not just wrong, but actively harmful. Emperor Zixthul's breathing grew labored as he struggled with the implications. Around the chamber, counselors exchanged glances, each seeing their own doubts reflected in their colleagues' eyes. Finally, the Emperor spoke. What guarantee do we have that this federation would not simply become another form of empire? Dr. Webb smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. The same guarantee that evolution provides your imperial magnificence. Any system that stops adapting, that becomes rigid and controlling, will eventually be replaced by something more flexible and cooperative. It's not a threat. It's a natural law. He paused, letting that sink in. The question isn't whether the Empire will change. The question is whether it will evolve voluntarily, or whether it will be replaced by something better. The silence that followed was deafening, because everyone in the chamber knew, deep in their hearts, that Dr. Webb was right. The Empire had become so focused on maintaining control that it had forgotten how to grow, and now, faced with species that had never stopped growing, it had to make a choice: evolve or become extinct. The age of the Galactic Empire was ending. The question was, what would rise to take its place? Chapter 3. The Breaking Point 3. Days after Dr. Webb's appearance before the High Council, the Empire was in chaos. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, mysterious energy signatures appearing around previously primitive worlds, ships with impossible capabilities materializing in restricted space, and most troubling of all, several member species openly declaring their independence from Imperial rule. On the bridge of the Zirian's Fury, Admiral Kethvar stood before a holographic display showing the spreading crisis. Red dots marked worlds in open rebellion, yellow indicated systems with unexplained technological advancement, and blue showed the location of mysterious new ships that defied all known physics. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen reported from her station, "we're receiving another transmission from Earth. Dr. Webb is requesting direct communication." The Admiral's claws drummed against his armrest. In 3 days, everything he'd believed about the EI's galactic order had crumbled. On screen, Dr. Webb appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives from dozens of species, some recognizable as member races of the Empire, others completely unknown. "Good morning, Admiral," Dr. Webb said with genuine warmth. "I hope you're holding up well under the circumstances." "Dr. Webb," Kethvar replied, his voice carefully controlled, "the Empire is experiencing some difficulties. I assume you're somehow responsible?" "Responsible?" Dr. Webb seemed to consider the word. "I prefer to think of it as revealing what was already there. You see, Admiral, the Empire made a fundamental error in its assessment of the galaxy." "Which was?" "You assumed that technological stagnation meant lack of capability. You thought that because species weren't developing new weapons or conquest technologies, they weren't developing at all." Dr. Webb gestured to the beings behind him. "You couldn't have been more wrong." One of the figures stepped forward, a tall, crystalline being that seemed to be made of living light. When it spoke, its voice chimed like musical instruments. "I am Resonance of Truth, representing the Silicon Chorus of the Andromeda Cluster. For 200 years we have developed technologies that your empire would consider impossible." Another figure moved forward, a small insectoid creature with multiple eyes and delicate gossamer wings. "I am Hivemind Nexus 7, speaking, for the collective consciousness of Zirion Beta. We have been growing, learning, evolving our understanding of quantum consciousness, while your empire believed us to be merely efficient agricultural producers." Admiral Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine. These were member species of the Empire. Worlds that paid tribute, followed imperial law, submitted to imperial authority. Or so he had thought. "How many?" he asked quietly. "Honestly?" Dr. Webb shrugged. "We stopped counting at 300 worlds. It turns out that when you tell intelligent species that they're not allowed to develop certain technologies, they don't stop developing them. They just get better at hiding their progress." The implications were staggering. For centuries, the Empire had believed it was the pinnacle of galactic civilization, that its member species were grateful for imperial guidance and protection. But what if that had all been an illusion? "The Empire has provided stability, Admiral," Kethvar said, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. "Protection from chaos, from war, from growth," interrupted another figure, a gaseous being that shifted and flowed as it spoke. "I am the eternal wind of the nebula territories. Your empire's protection has been a cage. We have spent 4 centuries developing technologies based on plasma dynamics and stellar engineering, while pretending to be simple gas miners." Lieutenant Chen looked up from her console, her face pale. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the galaxy. It's as if entire star systems are coming online with technologies we've never seen before." Dr. Webb nodded sadly. "That's exactly what's happening, Lieutenant. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy's intelligent species are showing their true capabilities." On the main display, the scope of the revelation became clear. Across 3 galaxy arms, previously primitive worlds were revealing technologies that dwarfed anything in the Imperial arsenal. Ships that moved by folding space-time, manufacturing systems that could reshape matter at the molecular level, communication networks that spanned galactic distances instantaneously. "But why?" Admiral Kethavar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why hide such capabilities? Why submit to Imperial rule if you possessed such power?" The crystalline being resonance of truth chimed softly. "Because we hoped you would eventually learn. We hoped that the Empire would evolve beyond its need to control everything it encountered. We gave you 1,000 years to grow, to change, to become something worthy of the galaxy's trust. And instead," added the gaseous being, "you became more rigid, more controlling, more convinced of your own superiority. You stopped learning because you believed you already knew everything worth knowing." Dr. Webb stepped forward. "Admiral, do you know what the most dangerous thing in the universe is?" Kethvar shook his head. "A civilization that stops asking questions. The moment you decide you have all the answers, the moment you stop wondering what if, that's the moment you begin to die." Dr. Webb's expression grew sad. "The Empire stopped asking questions centuries ago." "So what happens now?" the Admiral asked. "That depends on you," Dr. Webb replied. "The Empire can continue to try to maintain control through force, in which case it will discover just how outmatched it really is, or it can choose to transform itself into something better." On the bridge, Captain Vorthak spoke up, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Transform into what?" "Into a true federation," said a new voice. The figure who stepped forward was unlike any species Kethvar had ever seen. Tall, graceful, with skin that seemed to shift color like an aurora. "I am Dreamweaver of Possibilities, representing the Ascended Collective of the Magellanic Bridge. We have transcended physical limitation, learned to exist as both matter and energy. We offer the Empire a choice: evolve with us, or be left behind by the universe itself." The words hit the bridge, crew like a physical blow. The Empire, which had believed itself to be the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, was suddenly faced with the reality that it was not only obsolete, but actively hindering the development of others. What would this federation look like? Admiral Kethavar asked. Dr. Webb smiled. Imagine a galaxy where each species contributes their unique strengths to solve common problems, where diversity of thought is valued over uniformity of control, where resources are shared rather than hoarded, where the goal isn't conquest but cooperation. He gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a different vision of the galaxy, not the rigid hierarchy of the Empire, but a flowing network of interconnected civilizations, each contributing to a greater whole. The Hive Mind Collective has developed consciousness-linking technologies that allow perfect communication and cooperation without loss of individual identity, Dr. Webb continued. The Silicon Chorus has mastered energy-matter conversion on a stellar scale. The Nebula Territories have learned to engineer space-time itself, and humanity has discovered how to integrate all these approaches into unified solutions. Unified solutions to what? Lieutenant Chan asked. To everything, replied Resonance of Truth. Disease, scarcity, conflict, death itself. When civilizations truly cooperate, when they share knowledge freely and work toward common goals, there is no problem that cannot be solved. Admiral Kethavar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: hope. For the first time, he was seeing a vision of the future that offered something more than endless conquest and control. But that hope was tempered by a growing realization. The High Council will never accept this. The Emperor, the military leadership, the bureaucracy, They're too invested in the current system. Are they? Dr. Webb asked. Or are they simply afraid of change? Because, Admiral, I have to tell you something. This transformation is going to happen whether the Empire's leadership accepts it or not. The only question is whether they'll be part of it or be swept aside by it. As if summoned by his words, Admiral Kethvar's communication system crackled to life. The voice of General Mordock filled the bridge, tight with barely controlled rage. Admiral Kethvar, you are hereby ordered to return to Imperial space immediately. The High Council has declared martial law throughout the Empire. Any species attempting to secede will be met with overwhelming military force. Dr. Webb sighed sadly. And there's your answer, Admiral. The Empire has chosen force over evolution. General Mordock, Admiral Kethvar spoke into his communicator. I respectfully request permission to continue diplomatic discussions with. There will be no negotiations with rebels and terrorists. General Mordock's voice cut through his words. The Empire does not negotiate with those who threaten galactic stability. You have 6 hours to return to Imperial space, or you will be considered in violation of your oath and subject to court-martial. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Dr. Webb looked at Admiral Kethvar with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry, Admiral. I had hoped your leadership would see reason. Kethvar stared at the holographic display, watching as more and more systems declared independence from Imperial rule. His entire career had been built on loyalty to the Empire, on the belief that Imperial rule brought order to the galaxy. But now, faced with evidence that the Empire had been holding back the very civilizations it claimed to protect, he found himself questioning everything he'd ever believed. Dr. Webb, he said slowly, what would happen to Imperial personnel who chose to join this Federation? The same thing that would happen to any being who chose cooperation over conquest, Dr. Webb replied. They would be welcomed, their knowledge and experience valued, their perspectives heard. The goal isn't to destroy the Empire, Admiral. It's to transform it into something worthy of the remarkable beings it contains. Around the bridge, Kethvar could see his crew exchanging glances. In their eyes, he saw the same question he was asking himself. What if everything they'd been told about their purpose was wrong? Lieutenant Chen spoke up, her voice barely above, a whisper. Sir, I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. Several ships have declared their intention to defect to the Federation. The moment of decision had arrived. Admiral Kethvar could follow his orders, return to Imperial space and help the Empire attempt to crush this revolution through force. Or he could make a choice that would change not just his own life, but potentially the fate of the galaxy itself. He looked one more time at the holographic display, seeing not the end of order but the beginning of something greater. Lieutenant Chen, he said quietly, open a fleet-wide communication channel. Yes, sir. Admiral Kethvar straightened his shoulders and prepared to speak words that would echo through history. The Empire was about to discover what happened when evolution could no longer be contained. The universe was about to change forever. Chapter 4. The New Dawn Admiral. Kethvar's voice carried across the Imperial fleet with unprecedented clarity and conviction. All ships, this is Admiral Kethvar. I'm sure you've all witnessed the events of the past few days. I'm sure you have questions about what this means for us, for our mission, for our future. On the bridge of the Zirian's Fury, the crew listened. Intense silence. Dr. Webb and his diverse group of representatives watched with respectful attention, understanding that they were witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. I have served the Empire for 40 years, the Admiral continued. I believed in our mission of bringing order to the galaxy. I believed that our way was the only way to prevent chaos and conflict among the stars. He paused, looking around his bridge at the faces of beings from a dozen different worlds, all united in service to the Empire. I was wrong. The admission sent shockwaves through the fleet. To hear an admiral, one of the Empire's most decorated officers, acknowledge such a fundamental error was unprecedented. The evidence is before us, Kethvar continued. The species we believed were primitive have achieved technologies beyond our imagination.
The worlds we thought needed our guidance have been secretly developing solutions to problems we never knew existed. We haven't been protecting the galaxy. We've been holding it back.
Lieutenant Chen felt tears running down her cheeks as she listened to her commanding officer voice thoughts she'd carried for years, but never dared speak aloud. "So I'm making a choice," Admiral Kethvar declared. "Not just for myself, but for everyone who serves under my command. We can continue to serve an empire that fears change and crushes innovation, or we can help build something better. A galaxy where cooperation replaces conquest, where diversity of thought is celebrated, where every species has the chance to reach its full potential." He looked directly at Dr. Webb. "Dr. Webb, on behalf of the 47th Imperial Fleet, I formally request to join your Federation." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the fleet, ship after ship declared their support for the Admiral's decision. Communications channels lit up with voices of beings who had been waiting for someone to give them permission to hope. Dr. Webb smiled, but his expression was tempered with sadness. "Admiral, we welcome you and your fleet with open arms, but I need you to understand something. The Empire won't let this go unopposed." As if summoned by his words, the long-range sensors detected a massive Imperial fleet dropping out of hyperspace. General Mordok's flagship, the Iron Dominion, led a force of over 200 vessels, the largest military assembly in Imperial history. "Admiral Kethvar." General Mordok's voice crackled through the communication system. "By order of Emperor Zixthul, you and your rebel fleet are commanded to surrender immediately. Any resistance will be met with the full force of the Imperial Navy." Kethvar looked at his tactical display. His fleet numbered less than 30 ships, and while they were well-trained and experienced, they were vastly outnumbered. Against the Empire's most advanced military force, they wouldn't stand a chance. "Dr. Webb," he said quietly, "I hope your Federation has more than just impressive technology to offer." Dr. Webb's smile widened. "Admiral, you're about to see what 300 worlds can accomplish when they work together." He gestured, and the space around them began to fill with ships, but not ships as anyone had ever seen them before. They materialized not from hyperspace but from folded space-time itself, as if reality was bending to accommodate their presence. The vessels were beautiful in their impossibility. Some appeared to be made of pure crystallized light, others seemed to flow like liquid metal, and still others defied description entirely, existing simultaneously as matter and energy, solid and ethereal. "Federation vessels," Dr. Webb announced. "Please introduce yourselves to our new allies." The lead ship, a graceful construct that seemed to be built from woven starlight, transmitted a musical greeting. "We are the harmony of infinite voices, representing the Silicon Chorus. We welcome our Imperial friends to the dance of cooperation." Another vessel, this one appearing to shift between dimensions, added its own greeting. "We are the nexus of shared dreams, speaking for the consciousness collective. Your thoughts are welcome in our greater symphony." General Mordok's response was predictable. "Unknown vessels, you are in violation of Imperial space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." "General," Dr. Webb replied with infinite patience, "we're not in Imperial space anymore. This is free space belonging to no empire, claimed by no single authority. This is where civilizations come to grow beyond the limitations of conquest and control." "There is no such thing as free space," General Mordok snarled. "The Empire claims all territory necessary for galactic stability." "Does it?" asked a new voice, vast, ancient, carrying the weight of eons. A ship that seemed to be carved from a fragment of a nebula itself appeared among the Federation vessels. "I am the voice of deep time, speaking for the eternal consciousness of the galactic core. We have watched empires rise and fall for millions of years. The pattern is always the same. First growth, then stagnation, then replacement by something more adaptable." The implications sent a chill through both fleets. The galactic core civilizations were myths, legends spoken of in hushed tones. The idea that they not only existed but were taking sides in this conflict changed everything. General Mordoc's voice carried a note of uncertainty for the first time. Impossible. The core worlds are uninhabitable. Nothing could survive near the galactic center. Nothing that thinks like you. The voice of deep time replied gently. We transcended physical limitation long before your empire was even conceived. We have been waiting for the younger races to mature enough to join us in true civilization. Dr. Webb stepped forward. General Mordoc, Emperor Zixthul, members of the High Council, I know you're listening. This is your last chance to choose. Evolution over extinction. The galaxy is moving forward with or without you. The response came not from General Mordoc, but from the Emperor himself, his ancient voice crackling across space. Human, you speak of evolution, but what you offer is chaos. Without order, without control, there can be no stability. Your Majesty, Dr. Webb replied with genuine respect, you've ruled for 3 centuries. In all that time, what have you learned? What have you discovered? What new understanding have you gained about the universe? The silence that followed was telling. That's what I thought, Dr. Webb said sadly. You've spent 300 years maintaining control, but you've forgotten how to grow, and now the universe is leaving you behind. Admiral Kethvar watched the standoff with growing understanding. This wasn't really about military superiority or technological advantage. This was about 2 fundamentally different approaches to existence, one based on control and stagnation, the other on growth and cooperation. General Mordoc, he spoke into the communication channel, I've served beside you for 20 years. I've seen your dedication, your honor, your genuine belief in the Empire's mission. But look around you. Look at what these beings have accomplished. Don't you want to be part of something greater than conquest? Traitor, General Mordoc spat, but there was pain in his voice. You swore an oath to the Empire. I swore an oath to protect the galaxy, Kethvar replied, and I'm finally fulfilling it. What happened next would be remembered as the moment of choice. Across the Imperial fleet, individual ship commanders began making their own decisions. Some chose to remain loyal to the Empire, but others, inspired by Admiral Kethvar's courage, declared their independence. The Imperial formation began to fragment as ships broke away to join the growing Federation fleet. What had started as a confrontation between rebels and authority became a galaxy-wide referendum on the future of civilization itself. General Mordoc watched in growing desperation as his overwhelming force dwindled. All loyal vessels, prepare to fire on the rebel ships. We will not allow this rebellion to spread. General, no, Admiral Kethvar pleaded. There's been enough destruction, enough conquest. Can't you see? This is our chance to build something better. But General Mordoc's response was to order the attack. The remaining Imperial Loyalist ships opened fire on the Federation vessels, their weapons flashing across space in brilliant displays of destructive power. What happened next defied every principle of warfare the Empire had ever known. The Federation ships didn't return fire. Instead, they simply absorbed the attacks. The energy weapons that should have torn through their hulls were somehow converted into harmless light shows. The missiles that should have exploded on impact were transformed into cascades of beautiful, sparkling particles. How? General Mordoc whispered. Dr. Webb's voice carried across the battlefield with infinite sadness. General, when you truly understand the universe, destruction becomes as obsolete as your empire. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. We're simply transforming your weapons into something beautiful. The demonstration of power was absolute. The Federation didn't need to fight the Empire. They had transcended the very concept of warfare itself. But the most powerful moment came when Emperor Zixthul himself spoke, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. I have been wrong. The admission sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Emperor, who had ruled with absolute authority for 3 centuries, was acknowledging his failure. Dr. Webb, the Emperor continued, what would happen to those of us who chose the old ways? What would happen to beings like me, who built our lives on conquest and control? Dr. Webb's response was gentle, compassionate. Your Majesty, the Yao, same thing that happens to any being who chooses to grow. You would be welcomed, your knowledge valued, your experience respected. The goal isn't to punish those who chose the old ways. It's to help everyone find new ones. Lieutenant Chen looked up from her sensor display with wonder in her voice. Admiral, I'm detecting something unprecedented. It's as if the entire galaxy is awakening. She was right. From the galactic rim to the core worlds, civilizations that had hidden their true capabilities for centuries were revealing themselves. The network of cooperation that Dr. Webb had spoken of was becoming visible for the first time, stretching across millions of star systems in an intricate web of shared knowledge and mutual support. The age of the Galactic Empire was ending not with violence or conquest, but with the simple recognition that there were better ways to exist. General Mordock, surrounded by Federation vessels that could have destroyed his fleet, but chose instead to protect it, finally understood. This is what we could have been, he said quietly. This is what we should have been all along. Admiral Kethvar felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. For the first time in decades, he was part of something that created rather than conquered, that built up rather than tore down. Dr. Webb, he said, what happens now? Dr. Webb looked out at the mingled fleet, former enemies now working together, former rivals now cooperating, former conquerors now learning to serve something greater than themselves. Now, he said with a smile that seemed to light up space itself, we begin the real work. We build a galaxy worthy of the remarkable beings who inhabit it. We explore the universe not as conquerors, but as partners. We ask the questions that have never been asked and discover the answers that will transform everything. He paused, looking directly at the camera that was broadcasting his words to every corner of the galaxy. Welcome to the Federation, citizens of the galaxy. Welcome to your future. Epilogue 1 year later. Dr. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the Federation's first joint construction project. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, he could see the impossible. Ships from hundreds of different species working together to build something that no single civilization could have accomplished alone. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Crystalline beings had grown its structure from living light. Gaseous entities had woven electromagnetic fields to provide power. Mechanical species had contributed precision manufacturing systems. And humanity had provided the integration technology that allowed all these disparate elements to function as a unified whole. It's beautiful, said a familiar voice behind him. Webb turned to see Admiral Kethvar, now calling himself simply Kethvar, having abandoned his imperial rank, approaching with a data pad in his upper right hand. The monthly progress report, Kethvar explained, handing over the pad. I thought you'd want to see the latest figures. Webb scanned the document, his eyebrows rising as he read. 300 new member civilizations this month? That's unprecedented. Word spreads quickly when civilizations discover they don't have to choose between independence and isolation, Kethvar replied. The Federation model is proving incredibly attractive to species that have been suppressed by various empires throughout the galaxy. Webb nodded, thinking of the dozens of other empires that had emerged in different parts of the galaxy over the millennia. Most had followed the same pattern as the old Galactic Empire: initial growth followed by stagnation and eventual collapse. But now those same empires were faced with a new model, one that offered growth without conquest, cooperation without subjugation. Any word from Emperor Zixthal? Webb asked. Kethvar's expression grew thoughtful. He's still adapting. 3 centuries of absolute power aren't easy to give up, but he's been working with the Consciousness Collective on what they call perspective therapy, learning to see the universe through other beings' experiences. Through the viewport, they could see a ship that would have been impossible under the old Imperial system, a hybrid vessel combining Imperial engineering with Federation innovations, crewed by beings from dozens of different species. It was a living symbol of what cooperation could accomplish. Sometimes I wonder, Kethvar mused, what would have happened if we'd made this choice 1,000 years ago? How much further along would galactic civilization be? Webb considered the question. Maybe we needed those 1,000 years of empire to teach us what didn't work. Maybe civilizations have to go through their imperial phase before they're ready for true cooperation. A harsh lesson, Kethavar observed, but a necessary one, Webb replied. The universe doesn't give us the easy answers, my friend. It makes us work for wisdom. As they watched, a group of ships from the old Imperial Navy approached the station, their hull markings showing they had volunteered for Federation service. Leading them was General Mordok's former flagship, now renamed the New Harmony, and crewed by beings who had once been enemies. Speaking of wisdom, Kethavar said, I've been meaning to ask you something. That first day when you appeared before the High Council, how did you know it would work? How did you know the Empire would choose evolution over destruction? Webb smiled. I didn't. But I knew something else. The universe has a tendency toward complexity, toward cooperation, toward growth. Empires like the old Galactic Empire fight against that tendency, but they can't fight it forever. Eventually, the universe wins. He gestured toward the viewport, where the impossible was happening every day. Former enemies working together, former competitors sharing knowledge freely, former conquerors learning to serve something greater than themselves. This isn't the end of the story, Webb said quietly. It's the beginning. We've taken the first step toward becoming a truly galactic civilization, one that values diversity, celebrates innovation, and works together to solve problems instead of creating them. Somewhere in the depths of space, sensors detected the first stirrings of contact with extragalactic civilizations, beings from other galaxies who had been watching the Milky Way's development with interest. The Federation's message of cooperation had apparently reached far beyond their own galaxy's borders. The universe was vast, full of wonders yet to be discovered, and challenges yet to be faced. But for the first time in galactic history, the beings of the Milky Way would face those challenges together, as partners in the greatest adventure of all, the quest to understand their place in the infinite cosmos. Lieutenant Chen, now serving as the Federation's chief science officer, looked up from her console with excitement in her eyes. Dr. Webb, we're receiving a signal from the Andromeda Galaxy. It's an invitation to join something called the Intergalactic Council. Webb laughed, a sound full of joy and anticipation. The story of the Federation was just beginning, and already the universe was offering them new chapters to write. Signal back our acceptance, he said, and prepare for the next phase of our evolution. As Harmony Station continued its work of building bridges between civilizations, the message it represented spread throughout the cosmos. Cooperation was stronger than conquest, diversity more powerful than uniformity, and growth more valuable than control. The age of empire was over. The age of true civilization had begun, and somewhere in the quantum foam that underlay all reality, the universe itself seemed to pulse with approval, as if recognizing that its children had finally learned to work together instead of fighting each other. The future was bright with infinite possibilities, and for the first time in eons, the galaxy was ready to embrace them all. The end.